Today's recipe calls for cocoa powder. Going to show you how to make s'mores, frozen s'mores to be exact. This is a nice little fun play on the classic treat. They're super tasty and fun to make. So with that said, let's get started.
The first thing we need to do to make these flameless s'mores is make homemade chocolate pudding. Collect a large bowl with a fine mesh strainer. To that, we'll add a quarter cup or 25 grams of cocoa powder. Following that, add 3 tablespoons cornstarch. This ingredient is optional, but will help intensify the chocolate flavor. Dump in 2 teaspoons instant espresso powder. After that, sift everything into the bowl. Cocoa powder and cornstarch are notorious for being clumpy. Sifting it will help us see those clumps. This way we can break them up. It also helps jumpstart the mixing of the dry powders together. Push through any clumps that were left behind. Add the sweetness by making it Hale 2/3 cup or 130 grams granulated sugar. To counterbalance the sweet, drop in a quarter teaspoon sea salt. Next, whisk your face off to bring all the ingredients into one. Everything should be one even color. The last thing we need to add to the bowl is 2 1/4 cups or 531 mils of warm milk. It should just be slightly hot. Pour in about half of the liquid with one hand while you are whisking with the other. Doing this will help ensure that we break up any clumps and chunks that start to form. Once half of the dry has been mixed with the wet, add the rest of the milk, repeating the same process as before. Now that everything is in the bowl, whisk your little heart out until all of the dry has been dissolved into the milk. There is 2 reasons why we want to use warm or heated milk. First, the hot liquid will make it easier for the sugar to dissolve. Secondly, and most importantly, the hot milk will bloom the cocoa powder, giving us a more intense flavor. Ensure to whisk things really well. We do not want any clumps of powder. Once that's done, transfer things from the bowl over to a medium-sized saucepan. Scrape the bowl clean with a rubber spat. Snag the pot and gently toss it over a heating element. Crank the hotness level up to a medium-high temperature. We'll cook the pudding for around 5 to 6 minutes or until it becomes thick in viscosity. Throughout the cooking process, ensure to periodically whisk the pan of goods, hitting the sides, bottom, and the crease where the sides meet the bottom. We want to prevent things from sticking and burning. At first, it'll seem like you added too much milk, but we're waiting for the cornstarch to be activated by the heat, which in turn will give us the thick pudding we're used to seeing. When things start to thicken up is when you should start whisking more often, because it'll start to stick to the pan more once you reach this point. When things have turned from a pan of chocolate milk into a pan of chocolate pudding, immediately take it off the heat source. A great way to tell if it's the right viscosity, dip the back of a spoon into the pudding. If it coats the shovel and stays in place, then you know it's done. Keep in mind it'll thicken up as it cools down. I may have cooked mine just a touch too long, which is fine. Just ensure you don't overdo it though. After it's done, to finish it off, we'll mount the pudding with 2 tablespoons cold butter. This will add fat, which is flavor, richness, and it'll also give it a nice little shine. Whisk the butter in a few pads at a time until everything has been added in. Work the hunks of fat until it has been fully melted and mixed in. After the butter, add some flavored liquid known as 2 teaspoons vanilla extract. Whisk that in as well. In the end, the pudding should have this viscosity. Give it a taste test and adjust the flavor profile with coarse ground kosher salt. Now we need to cool it down. Grab the largest bowl you have. Fill that sucker up with frozen water, also known as ice cubes, about halfway up. Once the ice is in there, add another bowl that will fit inside of the larger bowl with the ice in it. Push the smaller bowl in so it sits somewhat flat and is making good contact with the ice. Next, transfer the pudding from the pan to the top smaller bowl. If you can, use metal bowls for this task. It'll hold the cold temp much better than a glass bowl. Scrape the pan clean with a rubber spat. No reason to waste this tasty stuff. Rinse your pan real quick, it'll make it easier to clean later. Now that all the chocolate goodness is in the holding vessel, using a rubber spat, continually stir it until it is fully chilled. Stir, scoop, and fold from the sides and bottom into the middle of the pudding. Doing this will release the heat and steam that is trapped. Also, the pudding that is touching the sides and bottom of the bowl will be cold, so folding the cold pudding into the hot pudding will help chill everything much faster. Keep doing this until it's fully chilled to the touch. When it's done, we'll leave it in this setup for the time being. Use some plastic wrap to keep it covered. It's important that the wrap is making contact with the pudding. We want to prevent it from drying out, causing a skin to form. When you have that accomplished, set it aside for now. We need to make some whipped cream next. Using a hand mixer or a stand mixer with the whisk attachment, add in half a cup or 65 grams powdered sugar. Sift the sugar into the bowl, pushing through any clumps that were left behind. Next, add half a cup or 118 ml heavy whipping cream. Give the cream a quick shake, just in case the fat and cream have separated from setting around. Scrape the measuring device clean with a rubber spatula. Whisk the two ingredients together until you reach stiff peaks. You can do this by hand, but I was feeling lazy. This is what stiff peaks should look like. The whipped cream should stick to the end of the whisk and hold its form without falling. After the cream has been added, bring the chocolate bowl back over and scrape the plastic clean of any pudding that is stuck to it. Scoop in about half of the cream into the bowl of chocolate. Using a rubber spat, scoop and fold it into the pudding, going from the outside towards the middle. Do this gently to not deflate the whipped cream. Since it's made up of a ton of super little bitty air bubbles, keep folding until most of it has been mixed in. Once you have reached this point, add the other half in. Repeat the same step as before until all of the whipped cream has been fully incorporated into the chocolatey goodness. Doing this will add volume to our pudding by adding the light, airy whipped cream, which will give us a light, soft texture, making the chocolate portion of the s'mores thick, light, airy, and delicious. Recover the goods and set it aside for now. Snag a 9 by 13 inch baking dish. Cover the entire pan with plastic wrap. This means all 4 sides will be covered with some excess wrap all the way across the pan. To help the plastic wrap stick and stay in place, very lightly grease the sides and bottom of the dish with a little bit of butter. This will act as a glue to keep things stuck. Once you've done that, add the clear wrap to the pan. Ensure you push it into all 4 corners, then smooth it out as much as possible. It's time to start building the base of this dessert. Snag your favorite type of graham cracker, karate chop the crackers in half. Once in half, toss them into the pan flat side, facing up, so the little holes of the graham cracker are facing the bottom of the pan. Keep breaking the crackers in half and lining the bottom of the pan from side to side lengthwise. For the bottom portion, repeat the same process, filling the empty spaces. Keep doing this until you have fully covered the bottom. You don't have to do this, but I really wanted to because things didn't feel finished. Anyways, break the crackers into quarter sections to fill in the super small edge that is still open on the end. It'll take about 15 full crackers broken in half to lay them completely across the pan. Now that we have our base built, it's time to make it rain chocolate pudding over the top of the crackers. Start pouring on one end, work your way towards the opposite end, going back and forth until it has all been added to the baking dish. Scrape the bowl clean with a rubber spatula to get it all out. Using a small offset spatula, smooth the chocolate goo out into one even layer all the way across. Make sure to push the pudding into all the corners and edges of the pan as well. Sprinkle the top with some flaky sea salt. If you don't have any, some tiny pinches of coarse ground kosher salt will also work. Cover the pan with some type of protective layer, then huck that thing into the freezer box. This way the pudding can slightly freeze. We'll let it hang out in the cold environment for 45 minutes or until mostly frozen. If you couldn't already tell, this is a fun twist on this childhood classic treat. Also, a little secret is you can use box pudding and store-bought whipped cream for this recipe. It'll make it much faster and easier, but making homemade is much better. When it's close to being done, we can start making the mellow portion of the s'mores. In the bowl of a stand mixer with a whisk attachment, or using a large bowl with a hand mixer, add in 4 ounces or 113 grams softened full-fat cream cheese. Following that, add the stickiest stuff to ever be created, which is 7 ounces or 198 grams marshmallow fluff. Mix these two ingredients together on medium-high speed until fully incorporated together. It should only take a few minutes. Do not overmix this. Doing so will cause the cream cheese to break, releasing all the water it holds. If you need to, you can finish folding it together with a rubber spatula. Once it's done, immediately rinse off the whisk attachment or any other tool that touched this stuff. We do not want that mellow goo to harden. Next, we need to make some more whipped cream. Grab a large holding device and a fine mesh strainer. To that, add in half a cup or 65 grams powdered sugar. Sift the sugar into the bowl. We do this because powdered sugar is notorious for being clumpy. We want to break those clumps up to ensure that they mix in. Following that, pour in half a cup or 118 mils of cold heavy whipping cream. Scrape the measuring device clean. Now whisk like there's no tomorrow to make whipped cream that has stiff peaks, like we did earlier. This time we have to do it by hand, so much for not being lazy. You can do this with a hand mixer or a stand mixer. Just use a clean, separate bowl from the mellow mix. It's imperative that you reach stiff peaks with the whipped cream. I messed this part up the first time and had to do it all over again. The first time I tried making the whipped cream into soft peaks, then adding the cream cheese and mellow, so I could mix it all together to reach stiff peaks without overworking it too much. Well, that did not work out, and I ended up with a soupy mess. This is why it's best to do it in this way. Once the whipped cream is done, we need to add it to the other bowl of goods. Gently toss the whipped cream into the mellow cream cheese mixture. We'll use the same method as before, scooping and folding with gentle hands. In the end, if you did things right, the mellow mixture should have doubled in size, since the whipped cream is so light and airy. Now that the marshmallow portion is done and the timer has gone off, pull the pan out of the freezer. Add the mellow mix to the top of the chocolate pudding. Toss on most of the mix, then spread it out with a rubber spatula. It seems to help if you make a layer before you lift up your tool. This way, you do not pull up any pudding. Add the rest of the goods in. Smooth things out into one even layer. Things don't need to be ultra smooth. We just need them to be even all the way across, hitting the edges and corners as well. Also, don't pull the pan out too early from the freezer. Doing so will cause condensation to build up and the pudding to thaw, which causes water to form, making the dessert a bit messy and making ice crystals when it refreezes, which of course we don't want. I had this happen because of the soupy mellow debacle. Anyways, just keep that in mind to not pull it out too early. Scrape your tool and bowl clean to get all the goods into the baking dish. Again, immediately rinse the bowl clean of all the sticky goo. Now we need to add the graham cracker to the top to make it an official s'more. We'll repeat the same process as before when we built our base. Snapping crackers in half and filling any small gaps with small pieces of cracker. Gently push the grahams into the mellows so that they stick in place. Once the cracker has been added and things look good, recover the pan so we can toss it back into the freezer. Allow them to freeze for at least 8 hours, or in my case, overnight. One dreamy sleep later, pull the pan from the freezer. Using the excess wrap as handles, gently pull the frozen s'mores out of the pan. Lightly pull, this way the wrap doesn't break. You can warm the sides a little with a torch or rub the sides with your hand. Your body heat will help the frozen stuff break away from the sides of the pan. It helps if you pop each side of the frozen stuff instead of trying to pull it out in one swift, sweet move. Once loose and free, snag a cutting board, place it over the top of the pan. In one swift motion, flip the pan and cutting board over. Take the pan off, leaving behind the s'mores on the cutting board. Gently rip off the saran wrap. Grab a chef's knife to cut things apart. This is pretty simple to do. Find where the crackers are split, then cut between them to make the little sandwiches. To help make clean cuts, dip your knife in a container of hot water. This will warm the blade, making it easier to cut through the cold item. Of course, make sure to wipe and dry the blade before you cut things. If you don't feel like doing that, use a warm, wet paper towel to wipe your blade clean after every cut you make. Keep cutting and wiping the blade until you have all of your little dessert sammies made. You'll want to do this fairly quickly because things will start to melt. Eat some right away or individually wrap each one, then toss it into the freezer for later. If you made those little tiny sections like I did, those make for a great snack. This is the perfect treat during the fall season without having to do all that hard work for a campfire, or it's the perfect sweet treat for the cookout. Whatever you decide to do, just enjoy.
Alright, now that our frozen s'mores are done, let's give them the old taste-a-roo. So looking at them, they came out super aesthetically pleasing. They got a good portion of chocolate and that mellow mix, and the graham crackers of course look super good as well. They look really fun and look like they're gonna be extra delicious and almost like a ice cream sandwich looking. Look bomb. So let's give it a shot. Do a smaller piece. They're kind of melty now, so but anyways, yeah. These frozen s'more sandwiches came out super dang good. We get that deep, rich chocolate flavor from our homemade chocolate pudding base layer that we put in there. Then we get a little bit of saltiness from that flaky sea salt that we sprinkled on top, which plays really well with the chocolate. The marshmallow mix brings a ton of flavor to the table. There's so many different things going on for it. We get that distinct tanginess from our cream cheese. Then we get a bit of sweetness from that marshmallow fluff. And of course you get that super tasty homemade whipped cream as well, which is very tasty even on its own. And you get a little bit of sweetness from that as well. The graham crackers on top and bottom, of course, are super good as well. Texture-wise, the mellows are super soft, light, and airy. Then we get a little bit of crunch factor from our chocolate, and of course a bunch of texture from our graham crackers. Overall, these things are just so dang good. This recipe is super easy to make. It's one of those perfect ones to make with the kids because that's how easy it is. Or if you're new to making desserts, it's a great one to start with. And you can pretty much make this any which way you want. Get real crazy with it and use any of your favorite type of graham crackers, like the cinnamon ones or the chocolate ones or the honey ones, or drizzle some dark chocolate over the top to even make it more chocolatey. Or get real bougie with it and make a flavored whipped cream like a strawberry one or a coffee one to make them extra bougie. So hopefully you enjoyed today's video. Thanks for watching. And I'm gonna go make some real s'mores on a fire because why not? So I'm gonna go do that and we'll see you on the next one. The flavor from our pudding that we put in there. Put the pudding in. And our marshmallow texture, layer texture, something or another on for it, in it, whatever. Honey graham crackers or cinnamon graham crackers. Dessert maker, which is perfect.